the project coordinator from the Waunakee Community Cares Coalition. I always start out this way, apologizing because it seems a little goofy that I'm talking in this microphone to our audience here, but we're filming for what's going to be on YouTube, so they need us speaking in the mic. So I'm joined tonight by Sean Casey from Hometown Pharmacy, and he's going to be sharing lots of great things tonight as well. This is the third of our wellness series that we're offering to our community. Anything that we can do to build a healthy and resilient community. And today we are going to present to you Strong Mind, Strong Body, Strong You. It is a curriculum that Sean and I worked collaboratively together on that we actually had it for our athletes at Waunakee High School. So they had the opportunity to sign up to have this. We did it twice at the high school, really to help our young people to really learn about mental health and physical health and how that leads to peak performance. So we are bringing it to the community, and we'll share a couple things that we've done with the youth, as well as how you can apply it to yourselves as adults. So we'll get started. I'm going to start off. So if you think about like the perfect world, like your utopia, what are some words that come to mind? Like happy, peace, positive. Perfect. Friends, interactions, connections, those types of things. Maddie, you got one back there for me, I know. Oh, healthy, resilient. Okay, all those things, right? So that's what we think of when we think of like our best lives, our best community, all those things. But ultimately, if you think about what the world is today, and a lot of our young people, especially, suicide's on the rise, alcohol, drugs, anything in the prevention world is on the rise. And so definitely some things that are challenging us, challenging our young people, that we have to work through to get to those parts that you talked about: joyful, connected, healthy, and resilient lifestyles. Just in our school, so every year our middle and high school do the youth risk behavior survey. And in that, and they do the Dane County Youth Assessment as well. So they do some surveys around healthy lifestyle and things that they're challenged with. And just recently they did this, and as you can see, almost 80% of our young women are challenged with anxiety, depression, suicide ideation. It was about 40% of our young men. And you can see how all the numbers have continued to increase since 2018. So definitely some challenges, but we're going to talk about your superpowers and how you can overcome that, both with healthy options that you're going to put into your body, as well as promoting a healthy mind. So I'm going to give it over to Sean, and he's going to take it from here.
Excellent. Thank you. If I start shouting too loud, please let me know. My voice carries. So the one thing that we always look at is this idea of a pyramid of wellness, with you at the center, and what's going into your body. Okay, your mind, what thoughts are coming in, which Michelle will be talking more about. Nutrition, the food aspect of things, as well as movement, because we know movement impacts mental health and wellness, as well as interacts with the nutrition to create a pyramid of wellness. So the one thing that when I'm working with kids or people who are physically active, I always like to talk to them about when do you actually make your training gains. So this is what I see really often is, especially with youth, is they work really hard during their athletic session, because that's when they're getting stronger, not realizing when their body actually gets strong is during that recovery time period. And so as I always put emphasis on how we speed up our recovery, and this is from anything from maybe you're outside doing yard work all day, or you're, running or whatever your things are, where we put a lot of our emphasis is on the sleep aspect as well as nutrition, which I'll be going more in depth on. All right. I always think about the body as fueling the tank, making sure that you're getting enough nutrition in. If you're driving from, say, Boston, Massachusetts to Los Angeles, California, how well are you going to be if you start the day off with an eighth tank of gas? All right, it's going to be a little bit rough. And that's even like in our own lives. as you're going into your work days, if we're really low on fuel, especially the right kinds, it's going to be hard to get to that destination. And we also want to make sure that if you have a diesel engine, you're not putting unleaded fuel into it, right? What you put in is going to affect what you are able to put out. And so the big emphasis when I'm talking with, especially with kids, is just making sure we're getting enough food. I always tell people we don't eat, we're people, we eat food, we don't eat numbers. So although I want someone, say 2,600 calories, this would be maybe like an 8th grade girl. Like we find most people are really under eating. And so to put that in perspective, 2,600 calories, that's like 8 6-inch oven roasted subs in Subway. So if you have, say, grandkids, this is something to make sure it's really important emphasis, or kids that are very highly exercised. If we don't get sin, it's a big deal. 3,200 calories, that is almost any guy in high school is going to be at least 3,200 calories. This would probably be on the low side. I have a lot of females that are involved in swimming, cross country, track and field, especially endurance runners that need this much. So to put this in perspective, if I had 10 6-inch oven roasted subs in Subway and I stacked them from the ground, that'd be 5 feet high as subs. So again, a lot of food we got to make sure that we're getting in the bodies that we emphasized with the kids. All right, the reason we put out so much emphasis on this is if we're not getting enough food now, this affects not only our performance now, but a lot of the down the road things. So osteoporosis, I know as we're getting older, that's something that becomes more of a greater concern. Getting the right food is going to impact there. I've worked with female, 19 to 20-year-old female college basketball players who had the bone structure of a 48-year-old woman. I work with a lot of people right now who they're in their 30s and they're struggling to have kids now that their athletic career is over because they didn't eat right. So again, just with the grandkids, kids, make sure you're emphasizing these things. Okay, the components of fuel, protein's a big one. The big thing that I always mention to people is try to think about easy ways for measurements. So what I'm always looking at is the palm of our hand. All right, trying to eat at least the palm of your hand at every meal. Yeah, for protein, if it's a meat. If it's like a legume, like a dried bean or pea, I'm thinking about more of like my fist. So again, whenever you're having your meals, think about easy portion sizes that make sense. Palm of the hand if it's a meat, size of your fist if it's more like a dried bean legume to get the protein. Now, does anyone, I should back up a little bit. Does anyone know what protein all does for the body? Any ideas? Okay, so muscle. Yeah, that's the big thing that protein is doing is it's providing that muscle support. We know as we're getting older, it's harder to hold on to that muscle. And if we don't have the muscle, that's what's going to prevent us from being active outside with everything. So that's a big one. Dietary fats. Does anyone know that why we need dietary fat in our diet? Okay. So one thing is the energy that we're burning right now as we're sitting in this room is dietary or is body fat. And so this is a source of energy. The other thing is, has anyone here ever heard of vitamin D before? Okay, does anyone know what vitamin D does? Bones. It's also very important for immune health, heart health, as well as mental health and wellness. One of the reasons we have so much seasonal depression here in the Wisconsin, especially during the winter months, is because we don't have the vitamin D exposure coming from sunlight. So that's the one thing is sources of dietary fat also helps the body absorb vitamin D. It also helps it to absorb antioxidants. Again, I like easy reference points. Your thumb is a serving of dietary fat. So when you're having a meal along with our palm size of protein, making sure that we're having a dietary fat the size of our thumb. Now, does anyone know sources of dietary fat? What's that? Avocado, exactly. Peanut butter. Does anyone like peanut butter? All right, if you don't like peanut butter, I don't know if you're human. Assuming you don't have an allergy of it, of course. But peanut butter, eggs, things of that nature are some of my favorites. Avocados, olive oil, if you're having a salad, that's really important there. Carbohydrates, this is the one that I talked about with a lot of kids. I see a lot of student athletes I'm working with, they almost get nervous about carbohydrates. thinking that if they get carbohydrates, it'll cause them to get out, gain a lot of weight and things of that nature. One thing I'm always emphasizing with kids is that we're getting it for our workout. So as they're sprinting up and down the court, jumping in the air, all those type of things, your body's burning them for energy. Then I also talk to them too. A lot of your carbohydrate sources, like your fruits and vegetables, contain antioxidants. Has anyone here heard of antioxidants before? Okay. Does anyone know what they do for the body? What's that? Oh, inflammation. My gosh. Well, with the cost of fruits and vegetables, there's some inflation there, so we're right on point there. So exactly, they help with inflammation. I should tell people that your antioxidants are kind of like your body's firefighters because they're putting out the inflammation. I mean, you can do the slide right now. Nature's natural antioxidants. This is important because inflammation is the root cause of every chronic disease out there. Diabetes, cardiovascular disease, so on and so forth. For youth athletes, a lot of them have like joint pain, muscle pains if they have a hard workout. Antioxidants will really speed up the body's recovery from exercise due to the fact it helps to reduce inflammation in joints, things of that nature. So another benefit of it. We also talked about with the kids how alcohol affects physical activity, how it is going to decrease muscle performance, both short-term as well as kind of the downstream effects. We also know that vaping is increasing in our schools. This was a study that was done in military where they looked at those who did vaping versus non-vapors. And as you can see, just if you vaped, you were slower running. So you're 27 seconds slower. You were able to do less push-ups, less sit-ups, decreased immune function. So again, just emphasizing that how this impacts as we're trying to create a healthy and resilient Waunakee. All right, we'll do the handoff.
Oh, if I need the clicker. All right, back to me. So I've had the good fortune of working with a team of neuroscientists and physicians in the Wisconsin area in the LEO project, which is a life ecology organization. So that organization works a lot with businesses and school districts. So I've been presenting on behalf of them to a lot of student groups. So so this is funny. Glenda, raise your hand if you know who, if I say Glenda, you know Glenda. Okay, everyone here, fantastic. I was just at Lambeau spoke at a conference on Sunday, and I asked a whole slew of students that were in my audience. I'm like, all right, who am I referencing? And like 2 hands went up. I'm like, how do you all not know the Wizard of Oz? So I was dating myself, obviously. But I always say you're gonna call me Glenda by the end of this, because why do you think when it comes to healthy and resilient behaviors that you had the power all along, just like Glenda did with Dorothy, right? That she said that the whole time you had the power all along to click your heels and go home. So one of the things I like to tell young people is that ultimately, when you think of some of these positive behaviors and positive mental health, a lot of those things, you don't have to look at the outside coming in, like, what do I need to buy to make me feel better, do outside of my normal life? You have those things within yourself to make things better. So how I best describe it is a balcony and a basement brain. So if something happens in your life, you have a big test coming up, maybe one of your children didn't listen to you, or you have a bad day at work, you enter that situation, you enter into your brain, into yourself, and you either go to the basement part of that, where that's where all the emotion and anxiety and fear lives. A lot of people call that, the emotional brain. Or you take the stairs to the balcony brain, where you can kind of look over everything, and that's where you have some focus, and that's where joy and connection and all of those things live. There's a reason we have a basement brain, an emotional brain. I say, you can't see it very well on this slide, but so if you're in the middle of the ocean kayaking and there's a whale swimming underneath you, you should get a little scared. I mean, there's a reason for that, because you might die. So there's a reason for your basement brain, because it's that survival piece. When your basement brain takes over, here's some of the things that you will feel. All right, so stress, anxiety, frustration, anger, jealousy. How many of you if you think about the last 2 weeks, how many of you felt any of those emotions in the last 2 weeks? Right. It's normal. I mean, it's going to happen. It would be crazy for us to try to convince kids or anyone that that doesn't happen. It's just, how do you maneuver through that, right? Here's when your balcony brain. So if you can get yourself up into that balcony brain of yours, that's where you will find some of these things: the problem solving, being vulnerable, self-awareness, all those things. Looking at that list, how many of you felt that within the last 2 weeks? Absolutely. So some of the things I'm going to teach you tonight, hopefully you're going to, if I asked you a month from now, you would be able to say that you spent a lot more time here than you did on that previous slide. Okay, Karate Kid. Do you all know Karate Kid, the movie? Okay, good. I mean, the kids I asked it on Sunday, they knew it, so which was awesome. The joke in my office is that I always run things past Maddie, my assistant there in the back, because she'll say, yeah, Michelle, they're not going to know that. Like, that's not going to work. So Maddie, she agreed to this slide. But here you have the match at the end of Karate Kid. So you have Danny LaRusso right there on the right. And then you have Johnny Lawrence from the Cobra Kai on the left. So which of those folks is operating in that basement brain, all about fear and manipulation? And the guy on the left, Johnny Lawrence, right? And Danielson, or Danny LaRusso, right? He's total focus. He ends up winning the match. And it's a great clip if you haven't seen it. I talk to kids a lot about, who are those athletes that you see when they walk onto a field, they just own it. You know that they're not just good athletes, but they're good humans, that people respect them for everything they do. You think of JJ Watt, Serena Williams. Those are the kind of athletes that people really resonate about living in that balcony brain. But it takes a lot of work to get there. It just doesn't happen automatically. So you have to take the stairs there. So some of your, the top 3 things to growing your brain. So I'm going to talk about these 3 in detail, but I think I'm only going to talk about the first 2, and then you're going to get Sean back. So the first one I'm going to talk about is neuroplasticity. How many people have heard of neuroplasticity before? It's kind of a hot topic these days. So that's your superpower number 1. So ultimately, peak performance is about growing your brain. It's the only organ in our whole entire bodies that can continue to grow throughout our lifetime. And it can continue to grow where you are going to put its efforts. So if you choose, how many of you know those people that something happened, you had a bad day at work, whatever, they're like, I'm so miserable. Everything happens to me that's bad. My life is never awesome. And they're those kind of people, right? Those are the kind of people that build neural networks in their basement brain. So automatically, anything that happens to them, they're always going to go there because they've built that network there. How many of you know those people that something happens and they're like, well, that was a challenge. It wasn't the best, but you know what? I'm going to do something different next week, or that happened for a reason. And they start thinking differently about it, right? Not negative, but just differently. Those are the people that are building the neural networks to their balcony brain. And when you build those things, that's when you can start living in those areas. So just thinking about it builds neuroplasticity. With athletes, I always say, when you get injured, right, you either put ice or heat or something on an injury, because it's bringing blood to that area to heal it, just like the brain. So if you start putting focus in those certain areas, it's going to grow that part of the brain. Okay, next thing is feedback. This is also one of my favorites to talk about with kids. And we're not going to play the clip, and I can't even remember the movie this is. I always forget the name of this movie, but Will Ferrell, he's the soccer coach, and he's like, the epitome of the soccer coach telling these little kids, like, you're moving too slow, you suck, and on, just like belittling these children and talking about really bad feedback, how we give, what we often do to our kids. What I have told our athletes, this is what I want you to do the next time a coach gives you feedback, a parent gives you feedback, because ultimately another way to grow your brain is to receive feedback. You have to be open to feedback. That's one big strategy. But how you do it is you have to take in that feedback. And I said, let's say I have a son, Jake, he plays for the basketball team. He may make a really bad play, gets pulled off the court, and he's like, Jake, that was awful, whatever. What I want you to do is I want you to just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 in your head. Don't say anything. And then I want you to leave that situation saying, did I put it on there? Oh, no. Oh, I appreciate your feedback. Maybe it's here. Oh yeah, I appreciate your feedback. Said, you're gonna go home that night. Your dad's gonna say, Jake, I can't believe you threw the ball away. I want you to look your dad in the eye. I want you to think in your head, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then say to your dad, Dad, I appreciate your feedback. I go, first of all, your dad's gonna just jump out of his pants because he's not going to believe that you just did that. Because often it gets to like, words, people just get really defensive often when you get feedback. Think about a time when someone gave you feedback. But if you can really in your head, just give your brain a chance, give it a couple minutes or a couple seconds and just say, I appreciate your feedback. Then go away from that situation. Think about that feedback. It builds that neural network and you're going to be living in that higher brain more often than not. All right, so neuroplasticity and feedback. Soon I'm going to talk about these strategies after Sean's done. All right.
All right, so looking back at nutrition. So we talked about kind of your baseline nutrition, make sure we're getting the protein for our muscles, the carbohydrates for the quick energy, the fat because it helps with nutrients and energy too. So then the one thing that I like to focus on is like, okay, how do you actually use these principles around the time that you're working out? And this is one of the mistakes I find that almost all youth kids think about. A lot of people are looking, what's sports nutrition? And they think about sports nutrition as, what do I eat the night before a game or the day of a game? And what I was telling them is this is great, but if you haven't eaten well the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, leading up to your Friday football night game or whatever it is, you're already behind the 8 ball. So I always try to make the focus on is nutrition is a lifestyle thing, something that we're focusing on year round. It's just not a quick 3-week diet here, quick 3-week diet there. It's that entire picture. So I was actually just these last 3 weeks over in Dubai. One of my clients I work with is a high-level athlete. He won the gold at the last Olympic Games. So we got together this week because he starts his main Olympic prep period on May 1st, a year before the games are even coming, and dialing everything in. So when those games come, he's at his peak performance through nutrition, movement, mental health strategies, everything. So that's what I always like to tell people. Think of it as a lifestyle, not just the day that you need it. One thing that I always emphasize with things is making sure you know what works well in your body. Everyone's going to be a little bit different. The big thing with kids is, and I think even adults too, to a certain extent, is sometimes you get nervous, you try something new rather than sticking with what's worked well. I'll have people where, and one of the stories I shared with them, I was working with a high school girl. She was a Division I caliber swimmer. Her senior year in high school, she was picked to win, not only win her event, but set the state record. Everything was in the works. Got nervous before the event, took caffeine because she heard that caffeine helped with performance. Her first half of her endurance race, she was absolutely kicking butt. Heck, I think she was on Olympic speed as a high schooler at that time. Well, that caffeine wore off. She literally hit a wall, crashed, finished dead last. So that's how her high school career ended, was going from pick to set a state record to last in her race. So that's with everything. I always tell people, if you're not for sure, if you need help kind of calming nerves, what to do, that's when you reach out to an expert, not to do that experimentation. So talked about that with the game, and then, finding, again, some different options that work well. Around the time that I work out, I tend to use more of like easy digestible carbohydrates. So that was one point of emphasis as you're being physically active. Carbohydrates can be really nice around that time that you're working out for energy. And then I also talked about too is post-workout. What are easy things that you can have after a workout? And so carbohydrates. Does anybody have any idea why carbohydrates would be good post-workout or post-exercise or after a long physical day gardening? Yeah. Absolutely. So your body's been using those carbohydrates for energy during that time period, kind of being able to replenish the tank. And then kind of similar, does anybody have any idea why protein is going to be pretty important post-workout or post-exercise? What's that? Yeah, absolutely. Kind of recovering from the muscle on there. So that's why we put such emphasis around those two factors. And then I was talking about game day nutrition. I always tell, make sure people are knowing if you're traveling away games, don't assume that they're going to have healthy food in the concession stands. Most concession stands are Twizzlers, pizzas, and hot dogs, all right? And a walking taco here and there. So that's one thing I always put emphasis on is making sure that you're bringing your own food that you know sits well in your stomach. And so you're not relying on that greasy pizza, slice of pizza between your track meet races or something. All right, again, going back to the theme, re-emphasizing, make sure you're taking food with you, trail mix, fruit, granola bars, prepackaged smoothies, all those can work well. Going through, I'm gonna kind of jump through here. Supplementation, this is another thing that I get from a lot of kids. What should I be eating? And even adults, there's ideally we begin everything from food alone. We know it can be really hard to get all nutrients. So in some cases, supplementation does have benefits. Things that put emphasis on though, has it been tested? Third-party testing. Most companies never third-party test their products to make sure what's on the back of the label is actually what's in a product. And so that's really important that you're getting high quality supplements from, trusted brands there. And then I always tell kids too is the supplement red flags. What should you watch out for? One is what I call the WWE test. Now, is anyone familiar with the professional wrestling, right? The Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin and whatnot. So I always tell people, if the name of your supplement sounds like it could be the name of a WWE wrestler, don't take it. Or I call what's the mall test. If the name of your supplement sounded like you'd get arrested for performing it in the middle of a crowded mall, don't take it. So when I go to the local big box supplement stores and I see pre-workouts with names like Lit AF, Bucked Up, Rage, Nitro, Extreme. If I went into the middle of the mall and I performed Rage, Nitro, Extreme, I'd be arrested within like 30 seconds. So that's one thing I always put emphasis on is, when I'm talking with kids is making sure, because that's one of the questions I get all the time is pre-workouts. I'll be honest with you, the best pre-workout is probably going to be 8 hours of sleep and a decent meal. Will I use caffeine with people? Absolutely, I will use that with them, but that's what I always want to put emphasis on. The other thing is putting emphasis is there's going to be a lot of supplements that, and this is even for adults, even with things that sound healthy, there's often, especially weight loss supplements, things that help with, let me think, weight loss, pre-workouts, and usually for guys, it's like a libido type products. Those tend to be spiked with illegal ingredients. So one thing I always emphasize with athletes in particular is I work with a lot of professionals, a lot of Division I athletes who are tested to always check your supplement. So this supplement was bought over the counter in a supplement store here in the state of Wisconsin. They actually had ingredients in here where if they would have been tested, they would pop dirty. They would have lost their college scholarship and they could have kissed their NFL dreams goodbye. So again, kids, grandkids, it's always great to pursue your dreams. Don't let a supplement that has illegal ingredients be your trip up. Energy drinks, I always tell people energy is kind of like caffeine, or it's like borrowing a loan from a bank. You get that energy up front, but you have interest you have to pay on the way back, something not to abuse. So for most of when I'm working with high school athletes, what I'm putting focus on is vitamins and minerals. Most are going to be deficient in their vitamin D, creatine. There's actually a lot of benefits with creatine for mood, cognition, traumatic brain injuries, taurine. Ones that we emphasize for just general health and wellness. I always tell people our foundational six, I'm with Hometown Pharmacy, our foundational six is 6 nutrients ideally we'd be trying to get from food alone. But due to modern lifestyle, it's really tough. So here's vitamin D. We know vitamin D is really hard if we're not getting in sunlight, correct? Especially during the winter months, a very conservative dose that I'll use of vitamin D is 5,000 IUs. To get that from food alone, It's extremely tough. I should not assume anything. Does anyone in this room drink 2.5 gallons of milk a day? Anyone at 8 cups of white mushrooms a day? Any 130 egg yolks a day, people? Okay, cool. I didn't want to assume anything there. So if you're not getting that amount of those foods, you're not coming close to probably your vitamin D needs. Even during the summer, we find a lot of people are deficient. So again, that's where we put our emphasis on creatine. Like I said, not too many people eat 5 pounds of raw meat a day. Again, I don't want to assume anything, but I feel that's a safe bet. So that's there. The one thing I always like emphasize too is a lot of medications deplete essential nutrients in the body. Now, this is not me saying do not take a medication. Obviously, consult with your healthcare professional, but this is something that not a lot of people realize. So like your blood pressure medications, a lot of your blood pressure medications deplete magnesium, potassium, B vitamins, vitamin C, and more. So in the case of magnesium, I always find it ironic because one of the functions of magnesium is to naturally reduce blood pressure. So some blood pressure medications will deplete the one essential nutrient that helps your body naturally regulate it. Ones I see often when I'm working with adolescents particularly is oral contraceptives. I work with a lot of female athletes who are on oral contraceptives. They are unaware that those oral contraceptives are depleting B vitamins, which are critical for energy production. Again, metformin, if someone's on stands for cholesterol, these are just all examples of medications that deplete essential nutrients within the body. All right, so any questions on the food aspect before I turn the mic back over? All right, very cool.
All right, Sean. All right, back to balcony brain, basement brain. I think you guys remember. Okay, so one of your superpowers, neuroplasticity, just being in a space to build your balcony or basement brain. Now we're going to talk about mind control and focus. We're going to get to all of these strategies right here in a hot second. But before we get to them, let's talk about what gets in the way from really focusing in on some of those strategies. 3 things: self-esteem, FOMO, fear of missing out, and fear of engagement. So I'm going to talk about each of those separately. How many of you think self-esteem is a good thing? No one wants, they're like, is she going to yell at me? A couple of you. So no, self-esteem is not necessarily a good thing. A lot, and you, just by the way it's depicted here in this cartoon, that we live in a society right now where a lot of kids feel, right, that they have to have a trophy for everything. I'm number one, I'm the best. And it's great to have high expectations for yourself. But what we forget is that it takes work to get there. That just by me saying like, I'm number one, have you done the work to be number one? Are you really number one? And does it really matter if you're number one? In the end, right? You just want to be joyful, connected, all those things you talked about at the beginning of tonight. This is one of my favorite things to share with young people. So Michael Jordan, when he was cut from the JV basketball team, his mom didn't call the athletic director and complain about it. She didn't say, oh, honey, just don't play JV, just, take a year off, we'll do whatever. No, she said, Michael, get out there in the driveway, get out there on the court and practice. That's how you get to be number one. It's not making excuses or complaining. You got to do the work, right? Another, so FOMO, kids talk about it all the time, fear of missing out, right? They're always figuring out what are their friends doing. And I don't know about you all just because of the crowd here, but I'm so glad I didn't grow up in the same era that my kids are with the phones and knowing where everyone is. And I can't even imagine. So you have this, right? You have the fear of missing out. But I always tell kids too, and maybe you tell your own kids this, like, don't waste your life figuring out what someone else is doing in their own life. Like, live your own life, right? That's what it's about. And that's how you build that balcony brain. Basement brain people look at other people's social media and wish they were there and feel so bad about their own life. Whereas balcony brain people are like, I don't really care what Johnny's doing. Here's where I'm going to live my best life. And then fear of engagement. So a lot of times kids don't want to engage in something because they're just fearful that they're going to fail. Like, taking risk is really hard these days for people. I mean, and it is, right? So I love sharing this photo. So this is my daughter right here, Sarah. This was the state track meet 2 years ago. She was ranked #1 in the state. Her good friend Chloe Larson was ranked #2 in the state. And this gal right here was ranked #3 in the state. So it was pouring down rain, pouring down rain. No one wanted to run. It was like, oh, I can't go out there and run. We just don't want to do it. So this is where they're coming across the finish line. It was a photo finish. Who do you think won that race? The girl that fell, because she hit the water and it propelled her as fast as in her lane across the finish line. So, which is just, it happens, right? But that's what happens. The fear of engagement. There's always going to be risks. There's always going to be what ifs. I mean, there were people around us that's like, oh, you got to go and you got to complain to the WA and be like, oh, we should rerun the race and that should, and actually it was Sarah that was like, you know what, that just happens. She's #1, I'm #2. That's just what happens. And so a lot of kids, that fear of engagement. So if you can get to a point where it's like, you know what, I'm going to take a risk. I'm not going to be fearful of it. That's another higher brain strategy. Okay. Also, your brain likes to do funny things to us. What is this? What do you think it says behind that rectangle? Jumping to conclusions, but it doesn't. Because our brain likes to make up stories. And I tell this story all the time about my son had sent me a text not so far back that said, Mom, send me my the car insurance card. And I'm like, of course, the mom, why? And then radio silence, nothing. And I don't know if your children text you back at length or call you immediately. Mine have never done that, right? So then what do I do as the parent? I'm like, OMG, where are you? What's going on? Call me. Like, right? I'm just going crazy. And eventually Fletcher calls me because, I have him dead in a ditch somewhere because he needed his insurance card. He calls me 20 minutes later. He's like, Mom, settle down. I was just applying for a job and to deliver pizzas. They just needed my insurance card. I'm like, oh, you're right. So me operating in my basement brain, which we a lot of times do, our brains start to make up stories. It went this way. And it was just, how can I practice some strategies so it doesn't do that? So let's talk about some of those strategies. So we talked about, okay. So I'm going to talk about these individually. One of the things, visualization. A lot of athletes, if you look at some of the most high-performing athletes, they visualize before they go into any competition, them coming down the court, shooting that 3 that wins the game, or swimming, the butterfly, and seeing themselves perform successfully. So doing that, visualizing that, is a way to build that upper brain. Here's something that we give out to the students. So strategies to manage stress. So if you are, we talk about you're going into exam week, or you're going into a big, if it's a big competition, it's, whether it's state finals or whatever it is, here's some things to manage stress. And we talk about these and have students really discuss the ones that they've used or things that they want to learn more about. But easy things, Sean talked about them. Some of these already. Getting just 8 hours of sleep, journaling, deep breathing. I'm going to lead you through some deep breathing exercise in a minute. Finding some people to laugh with, a power nap, healthy snacks, going outside. So all sorts of things that you can do. All right, another strategy. So this is the breath work one. And Sean's work, Sean and I talked a lot about this because he works with a lot of athletes and folks from around the world with breath work. And I use it a lot with young people too. And I use it all the time. But one of the key things to build that balcony brain and just get you to focus and have less stress is this simple strategy for breath work. So what I want you to do is practice it with me. So you're going to take, I'm not going to do it because I need to lead you through it. So you're going to take 5, I'm going to count to 5, and you're going to take a deep breath in at 5, hold it for 5, and then you're going to exhale for 5. All right. So inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How do you feel after just one time doing it? right? What I tell kids, and you're not in a stressful situation. I mean, I don't think you are anyway. You're not feeling stressed right now. But if you are in a stressful situation, that is money. I mean, it brings you back down. And usually it takes me about 2 or 3 of those. And I have a clear head and I can operate in my higher brain. This is the one that Maddie said I could use for you all, because you would know the Scooby and the Gang, but I had to use SpongeBob and the Gang for the high school students we worked with. But connection and connecting with people is one of the best things you can do to build your higher brain. And usually in a setting where I have people, I have you do some activities where you're connecting and meeting people and doing that, because it's right. When you start moving around and meeting people, it just brings joy. It's kind of fearful. Anytime someone says we're going to do an activity, you're just like, oh, geez, right? Like no one wants to do them, but it actually leads to joy and all of those things in the higher brain. So figure out who are those people that you want to be in your gang, fill your mystery machine. Here's a good book. I don't know if anyone's read this book before, but The Energy Bus just talks about getting the right people on your bus. It's a great one for kids as well as adults. I've used it in school settings with teachers. But that's just, I love giving out resources and telling. And then lastly, journaling. This is connecting with people and journaling. So we did this with our athletes that we had. I did this with the kids at Lambeau this last weekend, giving people journal prompts. So one of the things I remind young people, all people, is that who sits at your table? So if you think about the 6 people that you surround yourself with the most, are there any of them that just suck the energy right out of you? Or maybe the negative Nellies or whatever it might be. And I think as we age, we make better decisions about who is in our lives and who sits at our table. But for young people, it's something they really have to learn. And it's a strategy that we really try to walk our young people through. And so what I have them do is, not when we're with them, but this is what I want them to journal on. So journaling in itself, writing down how we feel and what we're thinking, is a great strategy to build that balcony brain. But if you can put it into perspective, like how can I surround myself with people to make myself better in these 6 categories? So how can is there someone in my life right now that's my champion, who encourages me to be a better person? Maybe there's not. So I might have to go out and find that person, right? Who's an expert, like my influencer? Who's the trailblazer? Someone that inspires me, someone that's really doing great things that I want to be like them. I want to do those things. Who's someone that has an outside viewpoint? Who connects us to other people? And then always, 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 who are you mentoring? Someone at your table should be who you are trying to mentor and make them a better person. So those are the 6 things that I talk with everyone about, but something that you can journal about tonight. So, that's it. We don't have anything more. I didn't even have an ending slide. We kept our time limit. Amy's happy with us. So, I mean, Sean and I both could talk for a long, long time about all of these things, the strategies for mental health and physical health. I know Maddie's going to share a couple of things that we're doing as a coalition, but before I give it to her, is there any questions that anybody might have? Or I think we need to give you a microphone.
I just wondered if there was any way to get the slides.
Absolutely. So I think is my contact information on something over there? So if you email me, I can send them to you. Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that.
How do you get somebody that's in the basement to get up to the balcony?
Right. Well, and I think that's the challenge, right? Now, one of the concerns is age too. Like, how long have they been in the basement? That sounds awful, but like, right? How long have they lived their lives there? That's going to be a part of the equation. But I think the biggest part is for them to just start employing even 1 or 2 of the strategies to get them just thinking differently. So we've worked with that LEO program. We've worked with school districts with all sorts of staff, or WPS was another company that they work where you have all those kind of people. But if you can start with just 2 of the strategies and then they say, wow, I feel a little different. Things were a little better. Then they're more interested to be like, can I learn a couple more strategies? I think you have to just start with some of the easy ones, especially the ones that just say, if something happens to me, just you thinking about like giving yourself 5 seconds to think before you engage in a conversation or answer back or get involved is allowing your brain to take the steps to the balcony, to think differently. So even if they start with just that helps them move into another strategy. I know they should come to one of these talks. Any other questions?
Sean, you talked a little bit about the anti-inflammatories, so oftentimes I think in this day and age, it's like we go to ibuprofen, we go to acetaminophen. Were there some examples of some of natural, sometimes you hear pomegranates or, those types of things that you give some examples of that might be good natural alternatives instead of going right to the acetaminophen or ibuprofens?
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing I'll say quick too about the acetaminophen, your Tylenols are really hard on the liver, and ibuprofen will tear up your guts on there. So that we try to go as natural as possible. Ones that work really good is actually a tart cherry. Tart cherries are really high in a certain type of antioxidant that helps to calm inflammation. And our neighbors, heck, we have Door County just a few hours up. So I'm giving you permission to road trip up that way. So cherries are really good. The other ones that pop into my mind are, sometimes you may hear turmeric. It's a spice that you can use for cooking. Turmeric, curcumin are other really natural good ones. But in general, a lot of your fruits and vegetables, aronia is another thing that's a native berry to this area. That's like the super powerhouse for antioxidants. So those are some nice ones that I will use on the natural. But the more fruits and vegetables you can get, usually you can calm down inflammation. And if anyone's interested, I have a machine over here that can actually test antioxidant levels in your skin. It doesn't require a blood prick. So if anyone wants to have fun with that afterwards, I can definitely fire it up. Good questions. Yep.
Oh, sorry, on all these protein supplements that the kids are using, workout, and even adults that are using.
I think they can
recommend?
be useful. So I always tell people, if you're getting enough protein just from your normal diet, taking a protein supplement won't add any benefit to it. That being said, a lot of kids, especially females, struggle to get enough protein in for their needs, even guys as well. And sometimes it's about convenience. So if I'm working with, a high schooler, middle schooler, how many of them actually get up 30 minutes in advance where they actually have enough time to make their own breakfast, or they kind of sleep as long as they're going to, right? And so in those situations, you can make a quick protein smoothie in about 3 minutes. You're pulling in those berries, the vegetables, and then you can add protein powder into it. So it works well for there. Or I work with a lot of kids who they might be traveling an hour one way to get to wherever their club practices. And so having a protein shake smoothie along with fruits, things of that nature can work really well for them.
What about the injured athletes?
Injured athletes, yep.
And for healing, do you recommend increased protein?
Still recommend protein there. If somebody has, if they're healing more from a tendon related injury, maybe they tore some cartilage or they have joint pains or things of that nature, I'll use what's called collagen protein. It's a type of protein. It doesn't do as much for the muscles, but it's really good for your skin, for your joints, and things of that nature. So I think they all have a place together.
Thank you.
Great questions.
Is the collagen protein good for us aging folks?
Absolutely. I think collagen protein definitely has a lot of benefits to keep, like I said, the joints running smooth. It's been shown to impact skin quality, bone quality if you're getting a high quality one, and then protein in general. I find a lot of people as they get older, they start to eat less protein. Well, here's Here's a question for you. If I have a 20-year-old version who's the same exact everything as an 80-year-old version of me, same body weight, same muscle, same everything, who do you think needs more protein? What's that? The older person. So your muscles, if I give 20 grams of protein to me at age 38 here versus the same amount of protein to my body 40 years from now, my body's only about half as responsive to it. To get the same effect as someone who's young, you actually need more protein relative to body weight. So no, I'm a fan of that. Again, if you're able to get it from diet alone, awesome. But I am not opposed to protein powders and collagens, like I said, because they have a lot of health benefits. Yep. Any others? Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Can we get a round of applause for Michelle and Sean? Woo! They did such a great job. I'm so proud. I feel like a proud mom when I watch them. But so I'm going to talk a little bit about an event we have happening on May 3rd. This is taking place at the high school. So it is a Narcan training, as well as talking about Kate's story. He graduated in year 2020 with me. He passed away in freshman year of college in, I believe, November from a fentanyl overdose. He didn't know he was taking fentanyl. It was a fake pill type of thing, which fentanyl is a crisis just happening within our generation a lot. So we're going to be talking about the warning sign, his story, the signs of overdose, and then also how you can administer Narcan, which is an easy life-saving skill. Especially it'll be good for our youth who are signing up for it, just because they might encounter that type of situation. But it is open to anyone. And we have flyers over there. It's also on our Facebook. So if you want to follow us on Facebook too, or Instagram, that would be nice at Waunakee Cares or at Waunakee Community Cares Coalition. And yeah, I think that's all for me. Awesome. Thank you guys.
Thank you.